Today I want to show you quickly the three options that you've got before you start painting on your watercolour paper. So you've probably got a loose sheet like this or a sheet in a book which you've taken out. The easiest thing to do is simply to put your paper down on any hard surface and start painting. What will happen though, especially when we do a landscape watercolour, is that we'll be using a lot more liquid on the paper. And what can happen if you don't stretch your paper, or at least tape it down, is that your paper will buckle. So if you don't have time to do anything or you don't have the energy to do anything, then feel free to just go straight ahead with your loose paper and start painting. But just know that you will get some buckling because of the amount of water used on the page. The next step up is to simply tape down your paper before you start painting. Tape it down with some masking tape. The key with the masking tape is, before you stick it down, is just to get rid of some of the strength of the masking tape by wiping it on your jumper or your trousers, just so that it's not quite so strong. And that way, when you finish your painting and you peel off the masking tape, you're less likely to tear your paper. But even so, I've just shown you this test painting, is that even with masking tape down on the sides, there is still some buckling. I don't know if you can see that, but can you see that this has only had a couple of layers of water on this paper, and there's definitely some buckling already going on, even with masking tape. So masking tape is fine, but just know that you may still get some buckling. So the best option for your watercolour painting is to stretch your paper, and it's much, much easier than you might think. So I'm going to show you really, really quickly now how to do it. So if you're going to stretch your paper, you'll need some sort of board. So you can either use a bit of hardboard or MDF like this one, or you can use like a chopping board. Anything wooden will do. I've got this little sort of just oversized A4 one like this. Anything like that will do. You can see what happens when you stretch your watercolour paper. Can you see how flat this is? This has had 2 or 3 layers of paint on it and water, and it's still totally flat. So I can go back into this and I can wet this as much as I like, and when it's dry again, it will always dry completely flat. So this is what we mean by stretching our paper, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So all you need is your board, you need a sponge, you need some water, and you need some tape. Now this is gum strip. I like to use gum strip, but you can use any gummed tape that you have. So the thing about this tape is that it's loose, and it's got gum on one side, so it's only activated when you actually put water on it. So this is what we're going to use, and I'll leave links down in the description in case that's useful. In terms of your watercolour paper, you can choose what side you use for your painting. It doesn't matter. Some watercolour papers will look the same on both sides, and some will be slightly different, but you can use either side. Sometimes you'll have much more of a rough texture on one and a smoother texture on another. So it's completely up to you which one you choose. But for watercolour painting, I think it's nice to have the rough texture. So what you do when you've got your board and you've got your paper, the first thing you need to do is just tear off 4 pieces of, let's do this like this. Let me even that up for you. Okay. I'm going to tear off 4 strips of gum strip. 1, 1 for the top, 1 for the bottom, and 1 for either side. Just make sure that when you're measuring them, you just go slightly longer than you need. Easy peasy. Keep them well out of the way. Then when you know which way up you want to be painting on, what we're going to do first is turn this over, wet the back. So you just get your sponge, wet your sponge, and give that water a nice light coating. You might have to go down, look sort of with your eyes closer to the level of the paper so that you can see where the water's going. Make sure that you've wetted the whole of that sheet. It doesn't need to be pools, but it does need to be wet. Make sure you're using a clean sponge, clean water, and try not to put your hands too much over the paper. When you've done the reverse, then you can turn it back again, lay it down, and do exactly the same on the front. We don't want to go over this too much because there is a coating on this paper, and what we don't want to do is take that coating off, but we do still need to make sure that all of it is wet. Again, not pools of water, but definitely wet. That's it for the paper. So now what we do is we get our tape. We put our tape down there with the gum side up. Take our sponge, give it a squeeze. We just run our sponge all the way the length of that tape. We can see that glue is activated. We just flip it over, pop it down. So half on, half off. Run your hand along. That's it. And then the same down the bottom. Get our sponge. Just wet it all the way along. In fact, I might go slightly more off than on, just so that we've got a little bit more to play with. That's it, like that. That's that one done. And then the same again with the sides. Nearly done. What you'll notice is that your paper will be buckling now, probably, and might buckle even more when you add sealer. See that? When you add your gummed tape. But this is a temporary measure and completely to be expected. And what will happen is, once it's dry and all that water has evaporated, that paper will become tight as a drum, and then you're ready to go. Now this is best done a day before, a couple of days before you're actually intending to work on the paper, because it gives it enough time to dry out. So try not to do this last minute. So that's it, all done. I will leave it for a little while, and I will come back and show you what it looks like when it's dry. As you can see now, there is a little bit of buckling. Can you see? But I expect that all to be gone by the time it's dry. So I'm just going to leave it there overnight, and I'll show you how it looks tomorrow. Hopefully, it's going to look exactly like this one. Tight as anything. Beautiful. So here we are. It's the next morning, and if I show you on an angle, I don't know if you can see. Hopefully, you can see that this paper is now completely flat. There's no bumps, no bending. It's beautiful. So now you can put as much water on it, well, within reason, as you need. And although it will buckle, it will then dry again, nice and flat. And then when your painting is ready, what you would do is just take a blade, and then you can cut out where the paper ends. You can just cut along there lightly, and then your painting will lift off, and you'll have this kind of border where the tape is around the side, but that's absolutely fine. And you can either trim that off again if you want to, or you can leave it there. And then when you go to, if you decide you want to frame it, if you buy a frame, you've got these little mounts. Your mount will cover it. Obviously this is the wrong size for this, but this is just an example to show you. Your mount will cover it. Also, if you do have this tape around the edges, then you can always use it to write down notes. Anything that you want to remember about your particular painting, you can just write it there. And then lastly, it's a really good idea to take a little picture with your phone of this at this stage, just in case you end up cropping off, cutting out this taped area, then you'll still have a record of the colours that you used and any other information that you wrote to go along with this particular painting. And that's it. I hope that's useful. Good luck, and we'll see you in class.